the kid bashed Marcus the Marcus. Hey, enjoy the pile and hello, Playword. So good that you're making it here to join me. Fantastic. So, and I also added a blood splatter because, well, he gets his hands dirty. That's what Marcus does. He's an intellectual, but his sleeves are rolled for sure. So a little bit of blood splatter on the loincloth, and he is ready to go. So that's the conversion I made. I also painted over the last week two arcane effigies. One is the old version that's no longer produced, but this is the current one. Both are lovely. And for today, I will be working on this handsome gentleman, the Cavatica. And I did some superficial research on the word Cavatica because I thought, well, that's got to be a name, right? It cannot be just a name. It's got to be something that has some sort of reference in the real world. And guess what? It does. Because Cavatica is also known as a barn spider, and it can be found in North America. So beware, because barn spiders are there. They can be like almost 1 inch long, I think. So not huge, but still spiders, itsy bitsy spiders. So this guy, according to the fluff story, he's a mimic. And he's a mimic who had a close call with Nexus and became infected. And mimics have this unusual physique and they essentially morph into anything they want to. So he cannot morph back to anything because this head thing, this spidery thing, stays with him. So Lucius, being a very creative person, thought, well, let's keep it going. And he started actually through Cavatica, talks with Nexus. And you know that Lucius is all about control, power, spying on people. So seems like a perfect match. Although Lucius doesn't like having only part of control. So there is bound to be some more interaction between Nexus and Lucius in the future. But for now, it's just a bit unstable. So as for the painting, that's the story. That's in a nutshell, because there is plenty more to be found in Malifaux Burns. And I have a feeling that Cavatica will play some kind of part in things that will happen later on. Now, what else can I say about him? I will tell briefly about what I plan to do as for painting, because painting standard rotten wood, some dirt on the base. As for the clothing, he's a dapper gentleman, so I will give him a proper dark green cloak, maybe a black hat with a hint of red potentially. Then the skull thing. I don't want to make it look like skull entirely because there are tiny actually like legs or spidery beads coming out of it. So I want to make it more pinkish, closer to the artwork that you can find in the app or in the book. And the cane will be probably dark brown with a hint of gold. There is also some golden chain that's probably connected to a fancy watch in his hand. And that's it. So I have a feeling that I should be able to finish this model during the stream, and I have something planned if I finish before the 3 hours mark is upon me. So yeah, so that's the plan for today. And seems like the stream is going smoothly. So no lags. Waldo is probably chewing on something else. And speaking of Waldo, I wanted to start with bringing your attention to last week's Waldo's section because there was huge reveal. The errata, the long-awaited errata, is there. So some changes to the models, some rebalancing. I think that explorers were affected by it a lot. Some changes to, well, pretty much all factions. As for my Neverborn, not huge changes, changes to changelings. The bolting gun seem more viable now. Yeah, that's the link. Thank you. And yeah, almost completely new. Yeah, Raspy has been reworked from scratch, and we're talking about not titled Raspy, but the first Raspy. So if you felt underwhelmed with Raspy, I think you should reevaluate it and have another look. So make sure you update your app. If it's not updated automatically, then remove it, reinstall it. If you log in, all your saved crews and everything will be there. That's what I did, and the cards got updated. So pretty excited about it because the bolting gun, I thought I like their mobility, but I just thought that they fold too quickly. Now with hard to kill and some nice marker manipulation, well, they are a consideration now. So I will give them a go once I get to putting my Titania on the table because I love the models. In fact, they've been sitting base coated for the past week and staring at me. This one is my favorite. So I will paint them. This gives me because I have my kit bashed Boltungin, which are made of swine cursed, and I made them well like 3 years ago, I believe, when the original models were not available yet, but the cards were there. So I scratch built them basically using other weird models. But these ones are pretty cool. And there is no new gaining grounds, but there is a hint that it's something that Word is working on, which I'm happy about because new gaining grounds is generally good news because it means that the best players are in the same spot as the newcomers because everyone's got to learn the strategies and schemes. So that's a good thing and probably will happen sometime, maybe this year, who knows. Also, general approach to Rata, and I will quote the word father here, is that it's not a hammer approach, but a chisel approach. So yes, it's not perfect, and yes, there are some models that still require some rebalancing. While speaking, let me just show you this. This is what I'm using for the wood, snakebite leather. There are some models that still need rebalancing, or one way or another. But rather than deep diving into making, trying to make everything work, Word is just taking this step by step and figuring out what really looks good holistically. And I like this approach because there are hundreds of models now in the game. There, there are just way too many to be uh, for all the issues to be fixed by one errata. So it's good that Word is aware that the beta testers or whoever reports those things, the community, of course, has impact here. People are aware of that, and that some changes will be in place. From what I saw, Ophelia's crew got hit pretty hard, but then Ophelia's crew was pretty obnoxious in terms of power level. English Ivan got toned down a little bit, but still very much playable. So yeah, I think that the changes are for the better overall. And actually, there was even a tournament in Poland last weekend where they already played using the new cards. And I think the first three spots, there were 8 people, I believe, or 10. I planned to go, but got a positive test couple days before going, so didn't get to go. So stayed home. And I think the top three places were all guild. Seems like new Nelly is the new hotness. No Neverborn players in that tournament, so hope I make it to the next one, but you never know. So I'm just taking my time to fill in on all the details on the base. I'll let it dry before I will definitely put a hint of green on the base, on the wood, to make it look like it's partly rotten. Just making sure I get all the angles right. And it will take me a while to get the cloak down because it's a big and complex element. And I want some smooth, nice highlights on it. And maybe even some transition from slightly purplish to green. I will show you in a second how I plan color scheme. Because base is easy, it's straightforward. I've done similar bases before. I can actually show you a very similar base on a painted miniature. And you might recall that miniature from one of the previous streams a couple months ago. So that's titled Tushes. So that's the kind of base I will be going for. So wood with some swamp, with some dirt on it, some even a blood splatter here. It's a great miniature. So and the scale is perfect, right? They look like good buddies. Up to no good for sure. Now, before I work on the rest of the miniature, I will give it, as per my usual strategy, an overbrush with off-white. Just to make sure that the details pop out a little bit more, because that will make for more effective use of contrast colors, of contrast paints, glazes, washes, because they will flow into the recessed areas, and the raised areas have an additional boost of white, which will keep them brighter. So you can call it a hobby hack, a trick, but this is like a more holistic approach to the base coating process. That's how I look at it. And as you can see at the back, the folds of the material, the raised ones, are slightly brighter than other parts, which is all I want. And this lovely, creepy, spidery face. So now, while the base is drying, I will give you an idea of how I think about color schemes. And I see that I still need to refill some of the details here because they got lost. Let me just grab the Basilican Gray and fill in some of the recessed areas because they didn't get enough, and the white is showing through. So when thinking about color schemes, that's what I do. So I take a look at this handy, you can find it online, just type in color wheel, you don't need to buy one, or you can print one, it's easy to find it. So when I said that I want dark green, let me show you that way, the light doesn't reflect off of it. So if I go the opposite direction, there is red, and red violet, and I actually like this turquoise, this blue green color, so I may go in that direction. And then for on the opposite side, I will look for elements that will add a touch of contrast. So now putting that into practice, I'm thinking that the cloak will be something in between here, so between green and blue-green, while he has a bow tie or some ornaments. He has a vest. So the vest might be either orange, red, or even going to slightly, not exactly the opposite color, but still a highly contrastive one. Could be violet. So, and the trousers, I think I'll just keep them dark. So the idea is just to have some idea of how I approach the painting, have this color scheme in mind. And I've already told you that the face is going to be pinkish. So looking at the color wheel, I think pinkish will nicely contrast with green. So I'll make sure that the edges of the cloak are brighter than the rest. And the trousers will be just dark. Hey, McBluff. How are you doing? Thanks for popping by. Good to see you. So that was my rambling on the color theory and how I apply it while creating a color scheme. And I will just mark the shoes in dark. Maybe Black Templar will be right. Working on an animatic. Cool. I'm pretty good, thank you. I've been locked in again due to obvious reasons, but weather outside has been so lousy that at this point I just don't mind staying at indoors so much. So it's been okay. I've been also working on bringing new furniture from IKEA and assembling it to my daughter's room, my younger daughter's room. And it's been taking a while. I'm not rushing it. So this is like Lego bricks for adults. Just taking my time. So doing some random things at home while working from home and while staying logged in. Just, taking advantage of more time here. And checking out some Malifaux content as well, because there has been, of course, some new content. And the next thing I wanted to give shout out to was the defective dice. If you haven't checked it out yet, do it. It's one of the best things, Malifaux things on YouTube. This is a channel where the guy who runs it, every couple weeks he releases a new video dedicated to lore connected with one master. And the guy does a thorough research on, yeah, it's not too bad being inside. I mean, I got used to that. Especially if you have kids at home, then you're bound to be in more than out and in this climate. So back to defective dice, and thank you for sharing the link in the chat. It's a great channel, and it seems like there is 20-minute, 15-minute, 30-minute long videos about the master, but there is thorough research behind it. There is a lot of story, a lot of background, and the guy who makes it goes through not only all the books, all the rule books, but also through um, Jeff. That might be the name. Not sure about the name of the person who runs it, but he even goes to such length that he studies the Word Chronicles, which is this e-zine which used to be published by Word back in the day. So he gives a thorough background on all Malifaux masters, and this is just amazing. So the latest one is about Lilith. And those of you who are new to the game may not be familiar. Yeah, the name is Jeff. So big shout out to Mr. Jeff. Yeah. And the latest one is about Lilith. And Lilith, those of you who are not familiar with her story, she was the master for the Nephilim keyword before her sister kicked her out. And there is a complex story, and I don't want to spoil it because it's quite deep. It goes to back to the first rule book. Uh, there is a lot of Pandora, a lot of Zoraida in that, and a lot of struggles and difficult relationship between the original inhabitants of Malifaux and the Neverborn. So really good stuff. So if you haven't subscribed to that channel, then please do it now because it's a great one. Now for the trousers, I will use Basilica and Grey mixed with a hint of brown. Just thinking about my mixes now. So yeah, defective dice is the way to go. And one of my favorite moments from his lore videos when he described Killjoy's Kool-Aid. Yeah, through the wall. That's true. That's how Mr. Killjoy makes his entrance to Malifaux lore. The Kool-Aid Man. Well, nothing cool about him, but yeah, I get the reference where he breaks through the wall. But the one about Lilith, not to reveal too much, but with the errata that I talked about earlier in the stream, there is this hint that Lilith maybe on her way back to Malifaux because her henchman Barbaros got a new keyword, returned. So who could it be that is returned, if not Lilith, returned from her, well, imprisonment? Well, imprisonment which happened because, well, she cannot die. That's what Zoraida believes, at least. So if returned is the new keyword, and Barbaros is in the outcast, does it mean she returns with the outcasts? And also, there is an interesting section in this lore video where Lilith talks with not Lilith. Yeah, Lilith actually, when she wants to gather some allies for her battle against Nekima, she talks to some merfolk, some sea creatures that are referred to as the Banished, I believe, in that story. And this sounds very much like the Gibbering Hordes. Of course, there is no success. She just kills too many of them. But you never know. They get their posteriors kicked on Earthside, so there might be more willing to make an alliance. So who knows? Who knows? Maybe a Lilith box with gibbering hordes and Barbaros and whatever her new totem would be, because it probably wouldn't be Charab anymore. That could be a thing. That's all pure speculation, of course. Yeah, one word. The community is going wild. That's very true. That's one word, but one word means one keyword. And the potential within keyword of having a new master or an old master returned, it's just huge. And I can't help but feel excited about it myself. I mean, putting I played Lilith I think only once or twice in second edition, but one of the best local players here, one of the best Polish players, he ran her a lot, and he was great with her because she had this ability that she could swap something like change of presto with um, which Colette does, but Lilith was just this super fast bitter control combination of a few things, and if she makes a return to Malifaux, then I reckon it's good news. So obviously a lot of speculation going on. how she returns, if she returns, would she be in vulnerable state? Would she have a different game style, a different play style? It's just pure guessing game at this point, but it's good. It's good to have something to speculate over. Hey, Doug. The power of lore and mechanics. Yeah, yeah. So if Lilith makes a return, I just hope I wouldn't need to switch factions. But you never know with Word. That there may come up with entirely new faction, there may come up with new master, because let's looking back historically, after the second edition there was a, can't remember the timeline for that specifically, but at some point they released a new master for every faction. That's when Titania came out, Zip, what else was there? Well, several masters. There was this nice graphics with shaded silhouettes of new masters, and each week they would reveal one more. Maybe that's something that they will do. I would love that. Of course, I have no insider's knowledge whatsoever. I'm just wild guessing here. Maybe doing some wishful thinking. But more masters means more minis. The round they released after the new masters with new upgrades for each master. Yeah, that's also true. So new masters, meaning that each master could be played in an entirely different way. So this is the dark base coat. Once it dries, I will wash over it with gray mixed with more brown. And now I will do the pink purple one for the vest. So for purple, I will just go with Magus purple. Yeah, the new titles feel like they bring in some of the versatility that upgrades brought. And the concept is similar, right? Because in at some point in the second edition, when someone announced that they're playing Dreamer, you didn't know whether it would be Dreamer the Summoner or Dreamer the hide and seek, up your face, smack you with cricket bat beater. So that's more or less what we have now, where you, until the start of the game, you can't be sure which version you're facing, and you just be cannot rest assured that you are soundly prepared for tacking against a certain master. Like Euripides is a good example, because you can tag for marker removal, and you can have still this new version which is more about shooting from distance than creating pillars and smacking you in the face. Yeah, you didn't announce your master until you revealed your crew. Yeah. So slightly different, but still the dynamics were there. So when you before you joined Doc, we were talking about. I was talking, and there was some discussion, some echo in the forums as well about the returned keyword. What could this pertain to? Does it mean that Lilith is coming back, and is it good? Nekima haters would say it's very good. So for the coat, I will mix these two, Verity's green and Achelian green. This one has heavy pigmentation, so it's a strong color. And this one will bring a touch of green that I want for his elegant clothes. It strongly implies that. Yeah, that's. But also think that Word likes to play with some preconceived notions we might have. And I'm sure that if any Word people, including Kimberly, are listening to that and have knowledge of what's going to happen, they are like, ha ha ha. We're not gonna tell you, but it's gonna be cool. I mean, I would be so tempted to just say, you might be onto something or you're completely wrong, but yeah, we'll we'll wait. We'll see. I reckon around Gen Con we might learn more, because Gen Con is the time where it tends to release the new stuff. So that would be my guess, that Gen Con, leading up to Gen Con, we'll find out more. So just testing, this is this rich saturated green I want to start with. And that's, mind you, that's not the end goal that you're looking at now, because this is a really heavy color, not the color that I have in mind for the finished effect. Just more of a base coat from which I will work on. So yeah, lots of interesting stuff. Yeah, I heard about the Army Painter speed paints. I even wanted to buy them, but they were already sold out in the local store where I buy my painting things. And from what I heard, they are half the price of GW product. So that alone is an incentive to get them. I watched some YouTube reviews, and I will definitely give them a go. I wanted to buy the starter set, but it wasn't available, so might look for a different source for that. But I will be giving them a go for sure. I don't like all of the contrast paints. Some of them either have bad pigmentation or just don't I just don't care for the color much. So it would be good to experiment a little bit with different producer. Well, thank you. Glad you like the base color. It's something that will be heavily modified, and I want to keep his top hat also greenish but darker, so some modification bound to happen there as well. Gilbert on hobby, yeah, I saw he had like a dozens of miniatures that he base coated with different paints, and I think Gilbert Down guy, he is a chemist by profession, so when he does breakdowns like that, it's really high value, because it's not only about how it looks, but why it looks like that. And I think he also did this video. There is a segment where he shows how they look when they dry over time. So yeah, and he generally great guy, great channel. Nothing Malifaux yet. He still needs to do some Malifaux to be fully recognized here. Yeah, he needs Malifaux in his life. He's a chemist, yeah. They have more consistent pigment density. Yeah, that's what I saw there, and that's what I just said that I don't like about some of the contrast colors, that the coverage is just not so good across the whole range. So if it's more coherent across the whole range, then plus dropper bottles, which is always a plus in my book, because the risk of spillage is lower and it's just more convenient to use them. So whenever working with codes, it's just a bit of pain to go deep into the recessed areas. But then you just need to figure out, well, do I really want to go that deep? Because would it be at all visible? If the answer is no, then no need to put the extra effort, really. But I will give them a try. Actually, I may look for some other sources. Maybe I will check on eBay, because I want to give them a go. And there's the hat. Just being careful not to paint too much of green onto the face thing because he's a mimic. He's a mimic who got too close to Nexus and got a parasite. But the parasite cannot really take over fully due to Nexus' unusual, well, immune system or metabolism or whatever it is that makes mimics so much different than humans. So, in a way, those are two entities in one body. And Lucius must be very happy to get some unique, absolutely unique insights from the Nexus side of things. Yeah, Reaper paints, those are, let me show you something. I have a couple of them, like those colors that I've been using. I bought them before my older daughter was born, so must have been like 8 to 9 years ago. And if I open the bottle, give it a shake, if I open it, it's in perfect state. I mean, the consistency is still there, and it's just ready for painting after, well, give or take a decade of usage, right? So what else can I say? If you get your money's worth, because some paints after a couple of years they won't be usable anymore at all. So don't really have much more to add. Now for the cloak, it's still dry, so I will keep the pants darker with basilican gray. Oh, and Dak, in case you missed it, here's your favorite guy, the Marcus the Barcus. So that he's made using M3E Marcus and Boltungin forearms and head. So that was fun to kit bash. And Marcus seems to be doing pretty well in the Vassal World Cup or Malifaux World Series, whatever it is, but I just saw some high-end notes and seemed like his win ratio is through the roof at this point. Oh, yeah, it wasn't my idea initially. A buddy asked me to make it for him, and he asked me which mini could be used to add this feral element to this version. And Bultungen immediately came to my mind because they are in similar scale. So yeah, I was right about it because it wasn't really a heavy conversion. I just chopped off his forearms and glued the Bultungen ones onto them. And the head just needed a little bit of work with green stuff to add the fur on the arms and the mane. It's a hyena mane, but I painted it with a hint of red to make it look more vibrant. Yeah, 100% weird parts. The only, I would say 99% weird parts if you count 1% as glue. So yeah, totally doable. Although you need you need a box with Marcus. But then if you bought the box with Marcus just to get access to his new minions, what are they called? The guy who recycle cards. The can't remember the name. But if you have a spare Marcus, then that's one of the ideas to use it. I discussed his win rates with my friends who are playing in the Vassal World Series. It doesn't come down to him being too strong, it comes down to poor curation of the strat skin pools. Okay. Alright. Assassinate. So I understand that he's good with Assassinate, right? He's hard to put down, does some solid killing. Yeah, because he can leap. So leap always gets him wherever he needs, right? No obstacles there. He doesn't go down. easily, and he can, if he can put, I don't, I'm not that familiar with his mechanics, but I assume that he can put upgrades on himself as well. So butterfly jump or things like that, they go a long way towards keeping your model alive. So if he has them, then yeah, then he's pretty good choice. I was just saddened to see that there is no Neverborn representation in the top 20 or top whatever it is at this point. And Miranda heals him, yeah. So strong, versatile, gets wherever he wants. Comes on 40mm base, which is also a factor. I saw a bat rep on YouTube in which he killed the Lone Marshal in one activation. Of course, there were some lucky flips. I think the player who controlled him flipped Red Joker and Severe on 2 negative flips, so some luck there, but just having this option to put your master out there turn 1, risking retaliation, but knowing that you can handle it, just says a lot. Plus the tigers are nasty. I was annoyed when I faced Marcus once because they have this upgrade that gives them stealth, and I thought, whoa, the minimum damage is pretty strong, not too high willpower, so let's obey them, but no, no good with upgrade that gives you stealth. Marcus and Neverborn. But I think that the main incentive of playing him with Arcanist is to put the upgrade that gives you first another card in hand, which is always good, and then the upgrade that allows your enforcers to use soulstones. So if you put some more upgrades on them, then they become really hard to take down. So what I will be doing now is it has this bluish look. I've added some contrast medium to the base color, so I'm applying a more diluted one just to filter it more towards the green side of things. And I will apply, I reckon, a layer or two just to saturate it further. And there are some good beasts with Neverborn, like Adze. Is he a beast though? I think he's a beast. But then there's always some good tech with Organist and beasts that they bring to the table, like the Cerberus, the Scorpius, which is pretty good in 3rd edition. And what else is a staple there? Koja, not sure anymore, but maybe still Koja. Plus, it's incredible how much also the totem of Marcus, how much damage can do, and you can just freely use the Jackalope to take down models that you suspect might have hidden martyrs stapled on them, because then you don't give away points, because he doesn't count for schemes and strategies. Ancient Pact on him means he doesn't care about the Black Joker. In Human Reflexes is amazing with the cats and Kojo. Yeah, in Human Reflexes goes a long, long way, because it means that, yeah, they still get hit, but it will most likely be just one hit, because they get to push away or move away actually when they are hit. So yeah, I can clearly see valid argument for using it. Plus, it gives you +1 to initiative, so that's always a good thing with this kind of crew where you do the alpha strike, manage to keep the key pieces alive turn 1, and know that you stand a good chance of winning initiative turn 2, and improve your chances by putting Ancient back then. I just seen Scorpius on some YouTube bat reps. Don't know how he performs really. Just think that this being this catalyst and keeping poison more active, maybe that's the thing. So now I will apply some walnut brown on the pants just to keep the color more towards brown zone. Scorpius I think was notoriously bad in the second edition, but still got better. But well, I don't know. I haven't played against him, but then I haven't played much really in recent months. Maybe just around 3, 4 games this year so far. This is what you get for having small kids at home, and also things get cancelled, different commitments, so never easy to find the time. And I will keep the pants somewhat to the warmer side of colors because I think that the cloak will turn out rather cool in terms of the temperature of colors. So this will be my attempt at rebalancing it and making sure it's not all cold colors. It's very shiny at the moment because the glaze is freshly applied. It will be toned down when it dries. So this is the moment where I can already start thinking about where do I want to push the shades, where do I want to push the shadows, how do I want to approach the highlights. And I'm not touching the face yet because the face will be much brighter, and there is always this risk that you can, while working on larger surface like the cloak or the hat, it's just easy to tint it, and I want to avoid it. So we'll do it later on. And now thinking about tweaking the colors that I have, I will go to this one, Terradon Turquoise, and I will thin it down and start putting it into the recessed areas. And then I will maybe use something brighter on the raised areas, and then take the brush and apply some highlights. Or actually, I may start with highlights now because I have my mix ready. This is my mini palette, my mini mixing pot, and the mix is there. So why not adding a bit of white to it? Off white, it's like bone white. A bit too much, but that's okay. Then some turquoise and some mixing medium to create a color that I will be using for highlights. So just mixing it on the palette, and since I have a piece of paper here to verify where I'm at in terms of its resemblance to the base coat, I can use it for quick reference. Okay. This one should be more or less what I have in mind. And I can effectively use the base coat mixed with some of the brighter shade to start applying highlights to the folds of the material. It's time consuming, so I'm not rushing through it, just taking my time, fold by fold, It's a good idea to focus on one specific area for the sake of consistency, just making sure that you tackle one area before you move on to another. So while just making sure that you cover all the elements that you want to be highlighted on this section of his robes, of his clothes, before you hop to another section. That would be my piece of advice while highlighting larger surfaces. Because you can always go back and push the colors more, but it's good to have at least some consistency and know that you fully covered one section before tackling another. Just working on the folds on the back. I think I will choose a slightly more blue shade for further highlights, just to add. And I will leave the hat for now, because I want the hat to be in a similar type of color, but somewhat different. So, Dag, what's your favorite beast to put on the table with Marcus? Of course, apart from Malisaurus Rex. Do you go with Adze, or do you have your preference? Because the hiring pool is quite immense with Marcus, so I know, of course, that there is no one good answer in Malifaux. It all depends on pool, scheme, stable, opponent. But do you have one that you would typically put on the table regardless of the combination of schemes and stones and everything else? Adding a hint of water, just a tiny drop of water for to keep the paint flow. Almost always Saber of Saberus, but the pick I like to take, I don't see a lot of other people taking is Kojo. Kojo, yeah, he can smack face, he can remove scheme markers. He's quite a big one and not too easy to take down. And I love the miniature. What's cooler than a King Kong like creature? And I like the names of the how his actions are called. It's just somebody studied ape behavior while designing the front and back of his card. Murder Monkey. Yeah, yeah, he can wreck face or even faces. Plus he's on a 50 millimeter base, so whatever his engagement is, you have to factor in the size of the base, and it automatically becomes a consideration. Now let me just dive in and grab. Oh yeah, Burforce One. Let me just dig out my turquoise paint. Okay, that's the one I will be using. It's called Meridius Blue from P3 range. No strong preference for range of paints. It's just one that I have on hand, and it's got this nice saturation. It goes to the blue range from green, so it should work well for highlights on the elegant clothes here. Burford Swan, that was the crew that one of those. Alex is the name of the guy. He used to be a top US player, I believe. So he would run. What are the names of those burrs? Oh yeah, 5 Slate Leech Maulers with Marcus. Yeah, I think this guy who came up with this idea, he actually made it work quite effectively. I don't know if he won a tournament with it or he just placed high, but he was the guy who could make everything work. I mean, he's the guy, but he just doesn't play Malifaux anymore, I think. I just need to refill my bottle with Lime Medium because my dropper bottle ran dry, so I will pour some in, hopefully not spill too much. There it goes. I just don't like this bottle, the default GW bottle, because it isn't efficient in use. You cannot really use it effectively. Much easier to have it transferred to dropper bottle where you can just decide how much you want to get on the miniature. So let's put some on the palette. Yeah, go ahead. Take care of your stuff. Doug, thanks for dropping by and cheers. And this is what I hate about P3 bottles, that the covers break easily and it's just not easy to use them, but the colors are pretty good. So that's a good mix. It has to be thinned down considerably for some smooth highlight work. Since I'm painting just one single miniature, and in some of my previous streams I painted up to three models simultaneously. This time I'm just taking my time, not hurrying, just enjoying every brush stroke I put on this lovely, elegant Cavatica model. Cavatica, also known as barn spider. Actually, I saw somewhere a tutorial on using dryer sheets for making something that looks like cobwebs on the base, so I might try it on this one. Haven't really considered it until now, just came to my mind that I might try it, but I would probably need to do it offline because I need to first check the bathroom if I have anything or the storage if I have anything that could be used instead of dryer sheets, because the idea was that you could just spread them and then put PVA glue on them, and when it dries it creates this web-like effect. So might be a good idea to put it on this one. Though I have to admit that with face like that, how do you blend in with the surroundings when you're a spy? Though, well, Nexus doesn't really have to be out there since it's a hive mind, so this guy could be literally quite far away from the subject or the place which he's observing and just get some hive mind coded messages from his fellow mites. Seems like Nexus also got toned down in the errata, though it's just hard for me to estimate how impactful that is since I've never played against Nexus. So I can only use my general understanding of how it functions. Actually, I have somewhere a turquoise ink which I may bring out later on. For now, I just want to use this diluted pink, diluted bluish hue to work over the raised areas, the folds of the material. This is the part of the process where the miniature is looking kind of messy. Definitely not where I want it to be in the end, but it's a stage to go through where the highlights are not evenly balanced on it yet, but it doesn't mean that you should be rushing through this stage. It's all about enjoying the process, I think. If you have this mindset that every brush stroke gets you further, gets you closer to where you want to be, then you won't feel unhappy painting. So I will place a few more highlights and then I think I will glaze it a few times with turquoise ink. See where I go from there, if I want to proceed or if I want to, because I still think like some of the shaded areas could use additional saturated decrease of intensity of colors. And while the colors dry, I can always switch to the base, because there is some highlights to be done there as well. But for now, I'm just steadily applying this bluish hue over here. Yeah, and I also want to make one more shout out. This is to the podcast that's called Capital City Crew podcast, CCCP. Uh, and the latest episode. Okay, maybe I will talk about it in a second because that's the one that I listened to most recently. Yeah, that's the one. Thank you for sharing the link. And hey, Sifel, good to see you. Hope you're doing well. So the latest episode here is about the new titled McMorning, and for me it was all new because I've never seen him on the table. I haven't really read on him, haven't checked his card much. So highly versatile master who can swap attack actions between his crew. So he could put a huge impactful attack on models which you would consider typically a support model, and seems like a master that can quickly adapt to any circumstances, and it's a good discussion. So if you're looking for something to listen to while you paint or commute to work or wherever you listen to podcasts, that's a good one for sure. He's scary. So you faced him, or you've seen him, or you've considered him, because he can get such high stat value on attacks that can do a lot that, yeah, could be overwhelming, I think. Just keeps you crew much more threatening. That's my understanding of this keyword. You faced him. All right. So you lived to tell the tale, but it's a tale of sorrow and misery. Now I will go up with the value of colors, and I will actually do an overbrush followed by some glazes. Let me just dig out the ink that I want. That's the one, the turquoise ink. Whoopsie, that's the ink that I will be using. Rogue Necro gets super fast and nasty. Yeah, and it has an attack which has one of the nastiest attacks named in the game, the Projectile Vomit. If you try to visualize it and imagine how it would look, how it would sound, then you better think about something else. So now I will go to much brighter values and mix the bluish tone with some of white. And selectively brush against some of the raised areas just to bring the contrast value again. And working on it from the bottom, just avoiding the top here, because there's this nice clean line separating the path of the cloak that covers the shoulders, and I want it clearly marked out. Also, using this off-white mixed in with the base color or the highlight color allows for some pretty rough color here, which kind of imitates the texture of material, and also the folds of the material are rather nicely designed on the model, but this kind of overbrush will pick out all the contours, all the elements which are more raised, and then when I start applying glazes again, these will just go well with such approach. So Mac Morning is a fun character. He's been around the Malifaux universe since the very beginning. So, and the new version, there is a potential here for really cool miniature. Because what's not to like about a crazy surgeon who staples additional limbs to himself and to others and does it on the fly in a jiffy? So yeah, crazy character. Like Seamus level of crazy. So while I have it on the brush, I will gradually go to even brighter value to pure bone white. Making sure I go over the rims of the top hat, and I can also do some work on the base while I'm at it. Yeah, he looks absolutely like he's having the time of his life. Just found the new purpose in life. No longer confined to pretending someone he's not, right? Because I think he just cut all formal ties with the guild. And just being this generous support master. So that's already looking pretty solid. Now time to play around a bit more with the values of the core colors that I have on the model. I'm so happy that the video is no longer lagging, because that was an issue last time, but the quality was never an issue, but just some lag in the video, but seems to be working properly. There's even just a short delay between what I see in the camera and what's happening on Twitch, so Waldo must be away. Let's not talk about him too much. He's probably preparing for his weekly tomorrow. And it would be interesting to see, well, what he has in store for us. Maybe the announcement of the painting competition. Maybe something more. It's actually cool that there is this regular pattern of updates. So now I'm using this slightly thinned down, a bit more greenish color, which I will be applying to the whole section, and this will further boost this back from blue to more green shade. And I've thinned it down so that it's to make sure it doesn't pull on the surface. And make sure I get an even coat on the whole model. And then I will maybe push the shades a little bit more because I want a bit more of dark color in the recessed areas. Feels like there should be a bit more of it. Some work on the top hat. Yeah. And this model has been provided by Word, so it's been sitting on my shelf for a number of weeks because I painted Lucius and Nexus from this box. And this one just didn't seem that interesting to me because it seemed like too static, too normal, but there is something to be said about models that have a lot of those fancy elements like this elegant cane chain hanging between the flaps of the material here. So yeah, plenty of potential that I'm digging into now. I think that my light on my desk actually makes it look more blue than green, but as always I will make sure to follow up with some pictures later on and share them. Now it needs to dry, but while it dries I can actually push the shaded areas. So I will use the contrast color and I will just take a brushful, directly mix it with the glaze that I've just used over the whole surface. Make sure it's much darker, not much darker, so I will keep it even darker. And just try to fill in the recessed areas with this darker shade. While the paint hasn't dried completely, it should smoothly blend in with other colors around it. And towards the end of this stream tonight, I will ask whoever is remaining among the viewers about what I should be painting next, because I will be painting an entirely new keyword, one that I've painted only Actually, I painted one miniature from this keyword a while ago. Not my faction. Don't want to reveal too much. But this is a keyword that uses references to one of the writers, horror writers I have a lot of respect for. But I will show you guys the boxes that I have, because I will be working on the whole keyword over the next couple of weeks, and I will let you choose which one should I show while painting during the streams. And I also have a plan to do a giveaway of some of the miniatures I painted over the streams. It will happen maybe next week, maybe the week after. I'm sure there will be some details up, but just want to, for now, give a hint that something like that is going to happen, and details will come later. Maybe I will even saturate the hat a bit more. Just add, why not? Why don't I add some black to it? Black Templar. That would really push it further to the dark tonation. Yeah, that's much darker. So rather than applying the highlights, I'm now pushing the shadows. Selectively, where I think they would naturally form. Because when you think about clothes, any clothes that you look at in daylight or in artificial light, there is typically a huge contrast between the raised areas and the ones that you see immediately up front. Just even thinking about the yellow hoodie that I'm wearing, if you look at the hood section, then the recessed areas are just dark and the raised ones are yellow, which is not something that would necessarily look great on a miniature, but it's a good example of how light and shades form on a surface. So just filling in the recesses with slightly darker color, swing it around to make sure it doesn't pool too much in one place. The under arm section here would be a good area to keep darker. Same on the other side. Yeah, the trousers can also use additional shade here, so I will go over them with black ink, Null oil. Okay. I want them much darker, but I wanted to give them a hint of brown just to add some visual warm element around this part of the miniature. And for the base, I can actually, now that the coat is drying, I can go ahead and start dabbing at the base and add some color there, because I just don't want it to be only dry brushed. So maybe some light green or some warm green, a touch of Gorgon Dark Green from Intensity Ink range. And I will also prepare some maybe not black. For the wood part, for the planks, I will use soft tone and mid tone for the base as well. Just put a few drops next to one another and start applying it to this part of the base that has only been dry brushed, just to keep it a bit more complex. I will also add some green glaze onto the planks, just to play with this idea that it's partly rotten. And using the same brush without even wiping it, switch to brown directly, because then I can still give it a dry brush, but it will already have more of complexity with those colors blended in beneath. And now for the soft tone. And just to keep it slightly brighter, I will push a little bit of yellow into that. And for vibrancy, I will use citron yellow. And I won't wait for paint to dry, just using the same brush. I will just dab it into the yellow and work it across some edges to further boost the brighter colors that I've dry brushed here. Besides, rotten old wood doesn't look only green or only, it isn't only in appearance green or only brown. It's a bit more complex tonation to that, so just playing with this notion a little bit. Now for the vest, I will push some magenta. As I said initially, that was the plan, to have purple or pinkish shade contrasted with dark yellow. So this is a candy ink, so it immediately makes an impact. It's much more vibrant than the surrounding colors, so it will create this nice spot in the midsection, and also going up a little bit, not going over to the tie that he's wearing, making sure I don't go too far with it. Yeah, and I will still push the edges on the robe, on the cloak, a little bit more, but before I get there, I will already start working on the face, I think. Yeah, because the tie will be white, so the face will be pinkish. That means that I can go ahead and start with Volupus Pink. And since the hat is drying, I will apply another dark saturated glaze over it, because my intention is for the hat to be slightly darker than the rest of the clothes. Just making sure I don't overdo, and some green is still visible through, though much darker than other areas. So halfway through the stream, and it definitely looks like I will be able to finish this model. I will, I think, also apply some dry pigments to create this nice dirt effect. But before I do it, I will start working on the face. So Volupus Pink, and the artwork shows that the eyes are pale blue. It's like glowy blue. So that's something that will be fun to pick out. But before I do it, I will actually reinforce the white base coat on this spider face he has. Let me just fill up the cup, my Matero, with hot water and keep the yerba mate going into my system. That feels good. So ivory white, and time to pick out the details on the insectoid face. So I'll try to keep it closer to the camera to make sure it's visible for you guys as well. And just very lightly bring out those details and the skull-like face. It's a creepy face for sure. But then if you're a mimic, which is not a human creature, it's a never-born humanoid creature that can take different forms, and you're stuck with Parasite and not able to change your form fully, well, you're still better off than that, but doesn't strike me as a happy life. And just making sure I cover the surface which has been tinted green or blue in the previous parts. Yeah, almost sorry, almost ready to apply the pink shade. Just need to give it a bit more time to dry. And while it's drying, I will also push the magenta in a little bit further, because there is one section that I pretty much skipped. And now that the cloak is dry, the coat I should say, I will use ivory for some light highlights using a brush-like technique on the edges, just focusing on the edges. So very lightly going up here. And here. Don't want to overdo because the tie that he has will be white, so no need to go too bright around it because this alone will create some sort of a focal point. Okay, and going again to pick out the edges. Oh, that's better. Now I can apply Volupus Pink onto the face and area around it. This isn't a very strong contrast paint, so I may need to apply 2 layers. Oh, not necessarily, because I can see it nicely interacted with this bright white base coat. And this should nicely flow into the recessed areas and boost this skull-like appearance of his face. Need to turn it upside down for a moment just to get to the neck area. Going around it a little bit just to make sure I don't leave any parts with just pure white. And I will use Volupus Pink as base for further highlights. So I'll just add color to the pink and keep on pushing the highlights. But this is already looking pretty sick. So now I will mix white with this pink and having really thin consistency. I can already start applying the highlights even before it fully dries. Maybe I will add a bit of bone white because it's got this slightly brownish greenish hue. Looks really glossy now, but I will take the gloss away with successive highlights here. I will go to pure white on those highlights in some areas just to further accentuate that it looks kind of like a skull, but leaving still some of this sickly looking pink visible. Just that's an important phase of doing highlights, making sure you do not cover wholly the previous layer of paint, because you want to create this transition from base coat to brighter shades. And that's why for this strategy, I like to have the paint thinned down. That gives me a bit more control over the process. I can just use this, essentially I can use the same mix and apply it over the same surface again and again, slightly narrowing the area which I go over with each pass, because then the transition happens smoothly. Actually, painting the blue pupils will be a bit of a challenge here, but no one said this hobby is not challenging. So now I'm almost ready to go to pure white, while the pinkish saturation of previous layers still is distinctly visible. It's a nice exercise to actually paint skull-like surface basing on pink color and then moving further to brighter shades. So controlled, gentle movements of the brush, making sure that still some of the pinkish color is visible. Because looks like the mutation didn't work well on this guy. So there's part of a human-like skull, part of an insect, and probably staying alive just because it has some unusual genetical material of the Neverborn. So this enforcer can be scheme runner, can be facilitator. Haven't had a thorough look at the card, but seems like at first glance the best use would be with Lucius 1. Now some ivory white. So landing a few highlights. Making sure that teeth, the rodent-like teeth, it's an amalgamation of different monstrosities, literally. Whatever phobia you might have, it is on this miniature. Whether you have a strong dislike for spiders or rodents or just horror creatures, it's there for you to enjoy, courtesy of Weird Miniatures, who create some of the most bizarre looking miniatures in the world. So the face, let me close in on this. It's got a hint of white and pink. And it's looking pretty good. So now I can go ahead and apply just white into the eye socket for the pupils. So we'll likely need a smaller brush. And keep on making this gentleman even more handsome. So all I need is a tiny dot. All right, that's one. Now let's try to make a matching one in the other eye socket. Looks good. Now looks like this cartoonish. Sorry if I did it off screen a little bit. Just struggling to find a good spot to hold it. Looks good. Now I will add a hint of blue to that. I think I will just go straight with Thalassar blue because it's a pretty strong color. And I will just mix it slightly with contrast medium just to thin it down a little bit. Making sure I stay hydrated. And yeah, it's a strong tint, strong blue tint already. So let's just flood the eye sockets with it. And the white dot stays brighter, whereas the area around it will remain modified with a light touch of blue, which is what I wanted. And I'm happy with that. Now maybe a slight touch up on the side of the trousers. Just a gentle addition of brighter zone. Yeah, looking closer to what I wanted. Let it dry for a second. Yeah, but the face is already what I would want it to be. Maybe a very light touch closer to the hat with darker shade of purple, or Magus purple would be a slightly darker shade, and I want it closer to the hat just to create some separation area. This is one creepy looking guy. Seems like painting a skull might be at first glance easier, but I assure you it's not, because there's less of surface to work with, which makes it slightly more challenging. I think I will still push a little bit those things that look like spider legs, just to make sure that those connections to the neck are visible. I'm getting creeped out by this model, and I'm used to working with weirdest shapes and forms. So that means that it's a wealthy model for sure. I'll just apply a dot of dark brown into the, well, nose socket. Just think it still stands out not enough, and I want it much darker. Yeah, that's better. That looks more like a skull now. And actually there is this fine line going around the top hat, which I may change to red, but I don't really feel like doing it. I will pick out the bow tie, then apply a glaze of light brown, and then repick it with pure white. Though I may actually apply a glaze of gray instead of black. So now for the cane. Just looking at the artwork, so maybe let's do one thing. I know how to paint the gloves now. I will use Glyph Charger Gray, which is this slightly bluish shade of gray. And I will just pick out the fingers to make sure that they are brighter before I hit them with glaze. And the same on the cane, because some of it got tinted by green. So time to do the tie first and then gloves. And as we're heading into towards the third hour of the stream, I'm pretty sure I will be able to finish this miniature before the stream is over. But I have something prepared in case that happens. Now the Glyph Charger Gray will nicely tint the gloves with bluish gray while keeping them look white and super elegant, because that's what this guy is. He's a dandy. Even he has a awfully mutated face, it's still a mutated dandy. Or dapper, or whatever name is more suitable. And I also think that parts of his shoes are actually white. So why don't I bring it up to white and then saturate it back to gray and pick it up again. Yeah. Time now for Glyph Charger Gray. It nicely tones down the white towards this gray-blue area. And now I can go ahead and pick up just take the dead white, pure white color. Using it, I will very lightly highlight the tie. Yep, that's what I meant. And also, while I have white on my palette, I might as well pick out the knuckle bones and the joints on the fingers, because that previous layer of Griff Charger gray brought it to a nice level, nice mixture of white, gray, and blue. So I will just make sure that I go along the folds of the material, reestablish it, make sure that the finger is there, the tip of the finger, and those white, don't know how you call them. They had similar shoes in Boardwalk Empire. Cavatica Widow Weaver. Creepy couple. Creepy power couple. Well, I would say that Widow Weaver has been around Mali for longer, so she's a bit more old-fashioned. Which is not a bad thing, just a different approach to style. Now the cane means that actually it has a golden tip, at least according to the artwork. And there is one color which I really like for this brown wood, which highly saturates it, so Gorgranta fur. But Widow Weaver is one of my favorite models for gaming, actually, because she's such a versatile model. She's fairly cheap for an henchman or henchwoman. She is extremely mobile. She can do some decent damage. She is a great summoner when you have ways to produce scrap, or you face opponents that bring constructs and can summon stitched or wicked dolls. Although why would you summon a wicked doll if you can summon a stitched? And she's terrifying. She has ways of healing herself, of putting enemy models out of position. She can do a lot, and she can cover a lot of board with placing to, I believe, within 12 inches to a web marker. So that's some sort of mobility, and I typically use her with Zoraida because Zoraida has easy access to scrap generation just by killing off the voodoo doll. And I also run her with Titania because she can drop a web marker under opponent's base. And once the marker is dropped, then the emissary has benefits because the model who stands in hazardous has a minus to defense against emissary's attacks. So there is a nice combo there. So Widow, and plus Widow Weaver is such a just a gorgeous model. And you can actually, one another thing that you can do is you can place your own model using her attack. So place a model into or within touching base to a web marker, so you can throw your Malisaurus Rex like 8 inches ahead. So it has a head start before biting into the opponent's ranks. So quite a lot for a 8 Soulstone model, 9 out of keyword, I believe. So she can do Vendetta quite efficiently. A nice, well-rounded model. So now what I need still remains to be done. Not much on this model, actually. Do not throw anything big and angry. Well, as long as that something can vent its frustration and anger on someone else, I see no reason why you should not do it. Okay, so now what I want to do is work on the golden stuff. So I'll grab Cyber Brown. And pick out those golden details. So this golden chain, just to give it a nice dark frame, which I will highlight in a second. But once I've put some dark brown around it, highlighting it in gold will be much more noticeable. And here are the buttons. And I can also do a nice separation line around the elements here, the cuffs. Yeah, and also I think I can, since this is such a nice dark color, I can do some lining, fine lining here as well. And on the other side as well, just to separate those elements. All right, and time for gold now, only I will slightly modify the look of the wood by applying Mornfang Brown, just a little bit of it. Just to keep it slightly warmer. And maybe a bit more of Sago Brown on the head of the fancy cane that he's wielding. He's Lucius guy, so he needs to have a fancy cane. As long as it's not fancier than Lucius's, then he should be fine. Those gloves look really good. I'm happy with how they came out. So just making sure I mark the whole section which is this ornamental piece. Yeah. And time for gold. And once the gold is painted, the only thing that I actually need to do is to finish the base and maybe do some dirt effects on the clothes. I'll just decide in a second. So for now, we'll just paint both sides of the cane with gold, and the reason why I applied brown, dark brown, is hopefully you can see it, that there is this slight separation between what is wood and what is metal. I think I will still highlight the wood slightly, the wooden section, and now I need a finer brush for that. And here I just want to make sure that even those different elements, different parts of that head of the fancy cane that he's holding are separated by thin brown lines, because it looks like a bird head. Could be something like a bird head or just a type of fancy cane. I don't use one, so can't really say whether it's just a fashion statement or type of fancy cane that people walk around with to show that they are very special and they have something to whack other people with. Now the chain. Sorry if I took it off the screen, but finding really difficult to get access to it. So just dabbing gold, making sure that the brown base coat around it is still roughly visible at least. And the golden buttons, of course. And maybe a very, very light touch of brighter shade to the side of the cane, followed with a glaze of brown. But before I do that, I will just lightly brush against it to just draw the focal point not only to the top of the cane but also to the midsection, and then I can just quickly go with flesh wash over it because it's got this slightly reddish saturation. Yeah, there it is. Yeah. Makes it look like polished wood, polished varnished wood. Now to finish off the metallics. See, you don't need to get super fancy while painting metallics, as long as you have a solid base gold. You can just switch to bright silver, and that's what I'm doing now, switching to mithril silver. And just very lightly touching the most protruding sections of this element. And the bottom. And while I'll still have the same flash wash, it will be perfect because it's got the same saturation that the cane has. So I will just apply it very lightly and give this gold a slight glaze. Just to kind of bring it all together. Now that's a happy looking dandy. Now for the next part I will apply some of the, actually there is still some silver on the base because there are some nail heads. So why don't I pick them up? I will pick them out with bright silver and I will glaze over them with brown or black in a second. 1, 2, 3, 4. Those are all the nails, I believe. So while I have brown on my palette still, I can just dab it. Make sure that silver is still visible. Now for the swamp part, or the dark green part, I will just use Nurgle's Rot, which is this technical paint, and I will use it selectively on the base just to keep it more diversified. I'm still thinking of using some cobweb-like effect. Maybe put a little bit of it on his fancy shoes. Oh, he would hate getting his elegant shoes dirty. But that's what he's getting. So this further reinforces because I did some green glazing in the recessed sections. So this will further boost it. And while this is a nice color and all, I will still play with it a bit and keep it maybe a bit darker in some sections. So for that I will just grab War of Lightning, which is this dark saturated green, and I will mix it up a little bit because swampy water doesn't come in just one shade of green. And while I like the consistency of Nurgle's Rod, I just think that I can tweak it slightly. So the only part that actually remains on this miniature is obviously the rim of the base. And I can just go ahead and paint it with dark black, because this will put a kind of nice frame to the miniature. That's how I look at it. And since this is an intense color, I just use an old worn brush that I don't feel bad about staining permanently with black. There is one more thing I will do here. I might add a little cobweb, although I haven't used technique for using dryer sheets yet, so that's something to be explored. There is some blue tack that will get a bit black. That's fine. Blue tack can be kneaded over and will still be white. Yeah. Why is it called blue tack if it's white? Maybe the original blue tack was designed as somewhat bluish. So that's the dapper guy, but one more tweak. I'll just grab, this is the kind of sponge that you have in your miniature boxes, or when you buy, well, it's used for packaging frequently. So I will tear it into a smaller bit, and I will use the pincers. And then another hobby trick, hobby cheating if you will. I'm still using the Cyber Brown. So I'll grab it with pincers, dip it in the brown. Pincers because it gives me easier access and maneuverability. And I will dab away the excess on the tissue until I see that it leaves this kind of seemingly random pattern. And then I will start, still a bit too much, which is not a problem. I can wipe it with the finger. And then once there isn't too much on it, I can start dabbing it from the bottom against the coat. Just make sure that you do it in a seemingly random fashion. Don't just do it across one area in one direction to one specific level, because that creates this nice random look of dirt speckled over the coat. You can go as heavy or as light as you feel. So as you can see, this looks random. This is good technique for creating blood splatters. I will show you some examples in a second. Make sure that his pretty shoes are also hit with it, and the trousers as well. Just make sure that you choose a color that will stand out a bit more. And I will do the same with green in a second. But even though he's a dandy, he wants to look elegant, he still needs to traverse areas that affect his clothing. And also this upper section, why not? Why not some stains here as well? Yeah, he's a dandy, but he can get some dirt on him as well. And I mentioned that this is good for blood splatters, so let me show you an example. This miniature had the same technique used for the blood on the forearm, and some of the bandages, some of the loincloth, some on the knee here. I just typically apply it after I have varnished the model because this black paint that I use, it's not paint, it's just this technical paint. It's highly glossy, so I don't want to dull it down with matte varnish, because matte varnish is what I typically use for sealing miniatures and adding this extra protective layer of paint on top of everything. So now I will go ahead and use the same technique with green. Actually, I will just take it directly from the pot. That's a lot of green. And I will do the same thing. I will dab it with the sponge to just create this random pattern of smear and dirt. You can do it with brush as well if you have good control or if you have an old brush, but this I find just allows me for creating this slightly more realistic effects. You can imagine him just strutting across bayou or wherever he's sent on behalf of his nasty and mean superiors. So that's one way of adding dirt, which is fairly easy to achieve because there is nothing really complex about what I'm doing now. But it's not about how complex the methods are, but how decent the effect is. And I think that the effect is pretty good. It also breaks away the monotony of the color that I've used here because I've highlighted this flap of cloak on purpose using I had quite unified approach. It's still a smooth blend from dark to bright, but I kept this whole upper section here much brighter just to make sure that once I've started applying the dirt effects, it remains highly affected by it. Yeah, I will need some more black on the side, but before I do it, I will just take him away. Oh, and by base magnet inserted into the base. That's my go-to solution for transporting miniatures. I'm using this massive case where I can keep miniatures safe with magnets. This is a neat way of just making sure they do not fall off. Just one tiny neodymium magnet keeps it in one place, and I don't worry about any kind of potential damage happening to the model while I have them bouncing in my bag. So let me just rework the side of the base, and in a second I will show you guys what I have planned for the next stream. And hopefully whoever is online and available in the chat will help me choose what I will be working on next. I have some hope. No, I won't be getting any games in before the next stream, but hopefully some games in March, because February wasn't really good for me in terms of getting games in, different factors. But hopefully March will turn the tide. So there is Mr. Cavatica in its full glory. Maybe I will change the lighting setup. Which one is best? This one keeps the color a bit warmer. This one keeps them. Okay, this one should be alright. I will of course post better pictures. But this one looks pretty much ready. Of course, it's just a matter of varnishing it. Well, thank you. Glad you like him. I will make sure to take some decent pictures, but before I close things off, because there is still one more thing I want to do, and let me just make some space on my area. Just put aside things that I'm not using now. So for my next stream, not too many viewers now, but maybe someone will reply, or our wonderful hobby assistant will choose what to paint next, because that's one box I have. It's still in the shrink foil. So in this one, so that's the next keyword I will be working on. We have the Scion of the Void, the Void Hunters, then the next box, the core box, the crew box, Tara core box. We have Karina, Tara, the Nothing Beast, and the Void Wretches. And one more box, which features some of the most bizarre looking models. Oh, wait until you've seen all, because that's the last box. Beyond Time. It has Ionis, so not the original version, but this version that I haven't really worked with yet, and Talos. So Scion is still an option, but maybe let's see if there are other suggestions, or maybe you can still choose one of these two. I'll let you take a second. If it's still Scion, then it's Scion. Scion is the only model that I've ever painted from this keyword, and it's an amazingly cool miniature for sure. Has this strong Lovecraftian vibe to it, the Cthulhu vibe. So the tentacles, the mystery, the silent evil thing that is so common for Lovecraft. Talos is your second vote. All right, so if Scion is your first vote, then I reckon we go. So actually, for next stream, I can prepare both Talos and Scion, and I've never really had a chance. I've never seen him on the table. I've never seen the miniature, so just want to use the couple more minutes of the stream to open it up and look at what's in the box. So those are the lovely miniatures. Talos comes on 40mm base. So that's Ionis, the Time Master. That's the heavily armored Talos. Quite a lot of elements to it, including his massive hammer, which will be just pure joy to work with. And I will need to think about how to assemble it so that I can paint the prisoner that's inside of him properly. And before we wrap things up, let me just have a look at the other box with the Void Wretches and the Scion. So since there are no other votes now, let's just say that for the next stream I will prepare both the Scion and the Talos, because I think that the Scion should be pretty fast to paint, so maybe even in less than 2 hours. We'll see how it goes. But here is the Scion, all the foil here to protect him in the nice cardboard box. Yeah, definitely lovely miniature with this flowy cloak, plenty of folds on it, some tentacle like her book of some dark mysteries, and those void hunters, which look like beefed up void wretches. And there's one thing that I want to draw your attention to, guys, before I wrap things up. Before I wrap up. So when you buy a box from Word, let me show you a cool trick. I will just use my hobby knife because it's not about being super mindful of the details here, but just want to show you what you can do with the box art. Because the symbols here are put on purpose. You can use them for your Malifaux games. I'll just you can do it with scissors. I'm just not very good at cutting things neatly. Have never been good with scissors since my kindergarten days. Hope my daughters grow to be better with it than I am. Otherwise, they are bound to use hobby knife for such occasions. So let me just cut it away, and I will show you a nice thing of using the content, using the box to full advantage, because there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So there are 5 of them. Just let's get it out of the box. Sorry for the noise. And conveniently, it came out with 30mm base, because what you can do with it is simply glue it and have a lovely scheme for your games. There are 5 that come in a box, and while you can already maybe you already have your own custom made scheme markers, this is a neat way of making your own. And what I advise, if you have spare bases, you can either glue them to this side, but then picking them up can be somewhat inconvenient. Just use super glue, of course, cut them away nicely, glue them to this side, because that way, when they're on the table, it's just easy to pick them up. And you have fully legit 30mm scheme markers for your crew. And 5 is typically, I would say, enough for a game of Malifaux. And 5 is what you get in the core box. In a smaller box like the one with Talos and Ionut, you get 1, 2, 3. No, this one is larger, but you can also cut it to size. So 2 boxes and you're all set. So this kind of approach allows you to save money on. Of course, there are plenty of choices when you want to buy lovely scheme markers, but this is very nice artwork, your faction artwork. So use it. Word designs boxes like that on purpose. So this model, the Cavatica that I painted during today's stream, I will show it on my Instagram. And you can find my Instagram account. I'm sure that the link will come up in the chat in a second. So I will take some good pictures of Cavatica there. I will also take one more thing I will do is I will apply matte varnish on the miniature in spray, and this also matte varnish has this effect that it kind of brings the colors together. And maybe after applying matte varnish, I will use just a tiny bit of Vallejo's effect on the base, just to further accentuate those swampy elements here. And maybe, just maybe, I will do something that looks like Cobweb. Not sure if I want to do it, but that's something to be explored. I've seen some pretty cool tutorials on using dryer sheets to achieve nice cobweb-like effect. Yeah. there is the miniature in its full glory or nastiness, however you choose to look at it. Let me just get a good zoom on this one. I think he turned out pretty cool. We have some warm colors in the midsection, slight brown hint added to his elegant pants, cold blue-green on the coat. This insectoid-like elements that was highlighted from pink to pure white. Some the hollow eye sockets are filled with blue, and there is a whitish pupil inside. Some gold on the fancy cane, and overall a pretty neat paint job, I think, for those last 2.5 hours. So next week it will be Scion of the Void from the Outcast section, from the Outcast faction, and also there will be maybe Talos. I will make sure to have them both assembled and prepared for painting. I will just need to figure out a good way of making sure that there's the right balance between magical etheric look and Lovecraftian creepy vibe. But for today, it's a wrap from me. So thank you. Big thanks to all of you who joined and took part in the discussion. Really very much looking forward already to my next stream, as I will be working on the obliteration keyword. And for now, it's a wrap. And I need to make sure, maybe I will try to take a group picture, because this is the complete box with titled Lucius and Nexus now. But anyway, thank you so much. Have a good rest of the day, morning, evening, wherever you are. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you next week. Bye bye.